So we've talked about the benefits of the mantra, and we have mentioned that like one benefit is it represents the siddhi or the accomplishment. So we've said that from one mantra garland, a deity arises. So the mantra is the deity. And then also the mantra garland is the offering. It makes offerings to the deity. And then also it purifies the obscurations of sentient beings. And then in the end, it also leads to the siddhi. It becomes the siddhi, the accomplishment. And so we mentioned that there is two types of accomplishment. The supreme siddhi is the attainment of enlightenment, and then the common siddhi, the siddhis are not, for example, the for enlightened activities, temporary benefits. So these are some of the most important benefits of the mantra Galand. There is, of course, many more than that, but for our purposes, it is not so useful to mention them all. Also, it is would be not a good use of our time, because if we talk too much, often actually all of the meaning is lost. So we keep it brief and to the essence. And so the essence ultimately is actually the ultimate essence of the benefit of the mantra Garland is it is like a wish fulfilling jewel, because whatever you wish from a wish fulfilling jewel will be given to you. And so likewise, if you practice only a single deity and a single mantra, you will achieve the temporary well-being of the higher realms and the ultimate state of enlightenment. And so for that also it is important that you have a correct intention for engaging in this practice. And that does not only go for mantra recitation, of course, but actually any virtuous activity that you engage in. For example, if you just give a little bit of food to an animal, or if you observe one single vow, the motivation behind that is always very important. And so the motivation that we should cultivate is an altruistic mind. And then as a result, there will always be a twofold result, temporary and ultimate. If the motivation is altruistic, then first there is the temporary benefit of birth in the higher realms, and then secondly, there's the ultimate benefit of attaining enlightenment. On the Bodhisattva vehicle, for example, we practice with that intention the 6 paramitas, or according to the tantric system, we offer the 7 branches, and their power, their qualities is the same. So the mantra balance should be understood as a wish-fulfilling jewel. And for example, that is also why we pray to Tara. And often people think that when I pray to Tara now, then it probably is only beneficial, it will only help me next life. But this life, she hasn't helped me so much. But that's actually completely wrong way of understanding it. Because we need to understand the essence of our supplication to Tara. And for that, we need to understand the benefits of the mantra. There's one supplication to Tara. She's the one that bestows, for example, children on those who don't have children, wealth on the poor, food on the impoverished, and so on. So from her, all these qualities really come. Or if you only pray to Chenrezig, it is the same. Actually, one single deity has many different manifestations, many different names, but all the deities have the same essence. So we can say, therefore, all the female classes of deities have the essence of Tara, and all the male classes of deities are by nature Chenrezig. So if you do not have a specific deity to practice, you can just practice Chenrezig or Tara, depending on whether you would like to practice a female or a male deity. Chenrezig and Tara are like the parents of all the deities, and they are practiced throughout all the lineages, the 4 major lineages. So the mantra we have said is in essence like a wish-fulfilling jewel, and that means whatever you wish for will be accomplished. Motivation, it is important that you do not only practice for the benefit of this life, but actually you should have the intention that I'm going to do this practice so that I attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And actually all the other benefits will arise just naturally as a byproduct. But if you only think about this life, for example, if you practice in order to get rich, it is possible that you might find some riches for some time, but then that merit will eventually come to an end. So whatever you practice, it is important that you always have complete ultimate enlightenment in mind, and that merit then will be endless. It will never be exhausted, and there will always be a temporary and an ultimate result. So that is a very important point to understand. So whatever you practice, the deity visualization or the mantra or any other virtue like practicing generosity, patience, or ethical discipline, the motivation of thinking I'm doing this in order to attain complete enlightenment, that is most important. And so then in a brief, the generation stage, now coming back to the generation stage, has two major benefits or qualities. Number one, we have mentioned by visualizing the deity, we are practicing the generation stage. We are purifying our fixation, our perception of the outer appearances, the world to possess substantial and true existence from its own side. So we have a strong impure perception, which is a perception that the outer universe and the sentient beings within all exist on their own as separate entities. And so through the generation stage, this impure perception is transformed first into a pure perception, and then that pure perception is transformed into emptiness. So that's the first benefit. And the second benefit of the generation stage is that it purifies the way in which we take birth, the existence of birth itself. So when the appearances of this life come to an end, that is when we die, then due to the force of karma, we have to take birth again. If we have not cultivated bodhicitta, we will not have much control, much freedom. So there is a big difference between having freedom and lacking freedom. And that is something we can observe already right now when we engage in practice. For example, for a practitioner, when an afflictive emotion arises, they recognize that affliction, and if they're a real practitioner, then they will be able to let it go. Ideally, they let it go by resting in the natural state of the mind and seeing the empty nature of the affliction. Or if not, at least they can let it go or transform it by cultivating love and compassion instead. But in any case, they are not controlled by the affliction. That is, they do not act out on it with their body or speech. So that is the way to attain freedom on the basis of causes, creating the right causes or avoiding the wrong causes by turning away the afflictive emotions. If you are not able to control the afflictions, then they will control your mind. And even if you recognize that you are afflicted, you will become controlled by anger, by jealousy. And becoming controlled means that you will act out on it in some way with your body or your speech. You're controlled, you lack self-control. And so if the afflictions control you right now in this life, then they will also control you later in the bardo. And then whichever affliction is predominant, this affliction will manifest as your self-projection and will control your mind, as a result of which you will take birth in the miserable states of existence or anywhere in the 6 realms of samsara. So here's the difference between freedom or lack of freedom. So the benefit of the generation stage, we said, is that it purifies the existence of taking birth. And so here it is also important to develop a pure perception when it comes to taking birth now. And so for that we train in our lifetime that all males, for example, are Chinresic and all females are Tara, or whichever Yidam deity. All sentient beings, all beings are the Yidam deity. And that is and that seeing is founded on the knowledge that this is how things really actually are by nature. So then when it comes to taking birth later in Bardom, first you will see your future parents in sexual intercourse, and due to the habitual imprints of desire, a desire for this intercourse will arise, and you will be drawn to your parents' womb. But in that moment, still, if you're able to remember the Yidam deity, you can see your future parents as the Yidam deity, and even if you take birth, you will take a fine birth. For example, you will have a precious human body that encounters the Dharma and so on. And also, if you have cultivated bodhicitta. For example, you will take birth anywhere in the higher realms. So the generation stage purifies the existence of birth, and there is 4 different types, ways in which we can take birth. And what is most important, and referring to all of them, is a pure perception. So, for example, according to the new tantric system, the main generation stage practice is that which blocks the entrance to a womb kind of birth. And that is called the 5 enlightenments, or 5 actualizations, a 5-fold visualization, which is quite complicated and difficult to practice, actually. But it is sufficient for us if we just are able to just remember the deity. So when you come to taking birth again and you see your future parents and you're able to remember that deity and then even seal that with bodhicitta, then instead of even taking birth, you might even block the entrance to the womb. But even if you take birth, you will take on a fine birth. And so the way in which we take birth in a womb, for instance, the generation stage actually precisely corresponds with the way of taking birth, how taking birth is explained in sciences, how a baby grows in the womb of a mother. So that actually very precisely corresponds to the generation stage visualization. And that makes sense because the scientists also see that with the wisdom mind. So what they see is how things really are, just according to the generation stage. So first, the generation stage, through the generation stage, we are purifying our impure perceptions into a pure perception. So the essential point, therefore, in the generation stage is to cultivate a pure perception. And then also, the generation stage has the benefit of purifying the way in which we take birth. And also, it can block the entrance to a womb.
So the litany, laundry, then these are the other, young Yapper, the Thorns of the Thorns of the Jantotari, so home at the home at the home at the home. The drawing board of the terror of the dinner, the correct just eat your heart. So you should have got the energy. So the really told all the general non contact with the second time for the should have got to the shadow of the past, church to me, walk long, send a card. Send a card of the issue of the ladies around the Later, Chapman got in our side. Now, said the target, the second to be not to be Shayatina. Religion to now, I sent the target, second to be the super same as you are, the new watch out to worry. When nobody might, you could be nobody, some oh, you could someone like you could be some. Watch out, the double. So the jury at the chapter, not about child there. Not the same upon that getting at the chapter, not to go. It is only a child, led by chapter. The church or child, the same as you would have. The real data contact different with them. And someone was going to buy a very and the guy contact of one, the contact of a Saya kan cerakan cermelaten melonatan long abasibalatan. Jadi nama sebab saya berpadu. Satu minggu nama saya sekarang boleh. Dia mesti jadi dia berkata. Jadi dia jadi cuma ini soal dia dengan saya kan pun. Kemudian sampai kota jadi sampai itu. 아니 좋아하는 경향이 있잖아. 참 좋아하죠. 위에서 좋아하는 거 그냥 좀 말하는 그 지식을 쌓아서 그다음 처와의 이 정말 이거는 받아들이게 좋아하는 마음을 참들이 아니 처와의 받쳐오는 처와가 받아 차와이 오서 처와의 뭐만을 쳐요. 내가 그거 맞아라. 저 세우면 Jordan trying more to my heads.
So then in the end of the generation stage, the generation stage is followed by the completion stage when the visualization dissolves. So first we have visualized the immeasurable palace of the deity and all the deities in the mandala, and then they all dissolve in the end. So this outer celestial palace or immeasurable palace, that actually is the outer universe. And the outer universe consists ordinarily of the 5 elements. And then also our bodies consist of the 5 elements. That is the outer universe consisting of the 5 elements. And then within, that is in the mind of beings, there are the 5 afflictions. But if they give rise to bodhicitta, then these afflictions transform into the 5 wisdoms. So that is when the afflictions ripen, they ripen into wisdom. In their unripe state, temporarily, they project the 6 realms of samsara. So from an impure perspective, we have the appearance of the 5 elements, the outer universe and one's own body, for example. So the one's own body, therefore, is the microcosm of the entire outer universe. And likewise, the mind of a single person represents the mind of all inner sentient beings. So we think about this world system, this planet, for example. No matter how long it may last and how vast it is impermanent because it is a compound. And that is the very same nature of one's own body. It is impermanent. So this is the nature to understand when we come to the completion stage. So that is actually something also that science has confirmed nowadays. And for example, thinking about this universe, or even just this planet, we think that it is so large and it will stay for such a long time, but actually there is countless planets and stars and universes out there that sort of float through the empty space, and all the time, like celestial bodies bump into each other, and then they collapse, they fall apart. And they fall apart because all they really are is a heap of particles. So when they collapse, it becomes nothing. And for example, if you just pick up like a little heap of earth or from the ground, and then you blow on it, it just disperses into dust, into nothingness. So just like this small heap of earth, the same thing will happen in the end to this world. It will just collapse into emptiness. So that is because it is a compound, and therefore it is impermanent. The great scholars have explained that elaborately in the various scriptures that follow logical reasoning and so on. So we think that this world really exists because it is so large and it has been there for so many millions of years. So we have this perception of this world is really there, and we as beings are really in this world. And that is this grasping, this false grasping at a concrete, substantial reality. And that state of mind is what creates samsara. So first we need to understand that what appears is a compound and therefore impermanent. And in order to realize that, we practice the generation stage. The generation stage is the dissolution of the visualization. So gradually the entire visualization dissolves, starting from the protection sphere, dissolving like one cloud into another. The entire celestial palace, the mandala, dissolves. All the deities dissolve. They dissolve into the principal deity in the center, the yap and the yum, male and female. And then the yum, the female, melts into the yap, the male. And then the main deity dissolves into the seed syllable hung at the heart. And then also the hung gradually dissolves. So you can refer to the details in your sadhana. So the benefit, the point of practicing the completion stage is that it purifies the existence of death. Actually, we have said that this outer universe disperses, collapses, just like a heap of dust. And this is the same what will happen to our body when we die. It dissolves in the same way. When we die, our elements dissolve. So there is our body consists of the element of earth, which is our bones and our flesh, and of water, our blood, for example, and of wind, our breath, and fire, the warmth, and then space, which is the consciousness. And that leaves the body and merges with the space of the universe, and remains without ever dying or taking birth. But for the time being, the consciousness follows the karmas accumulated, and whatever habitual imprints are within the mind will continue to project. So therefore we must recognize that appearances are our own mind. So whatever appears on the outer level, the universe and all the sentient beings within, in reality, on the ultimate level, really is a creation of our own mind. And how is the universe, our mind, for example? Universe is produced by the common, the collective habitual imprints and karma of beings. So what's a collective imprint? For example, we collectively designate this country as Ukraine, for example. We all believe that this is Ukraine, or I'm from Ukraine, and he's from here and she's from there. So we all have the same perception, the same habitual way of thinking. That is this collective karma, or we think that this is our world that we all live in. We collectively see it in this certain way. And then within this world, we also have individual karmas. And due to that, there is a great variety of beings appearing as humans or animals, beings with a form or without a form, like ice blocks. And all of that is created by the mind. We need to, in the completion stage, we dissolve this perception of the universe, our body, to possess any substantial inherent existence. So that is why all gradually dissolves. And that corresponds also to the way in which those elements actually dissolve when we die. So first, the earth consciousness, the earth element dissolves into water. Water dissolves into fire, fire into wind, and then wind into space. Consciousness then at that point leaves the body and follows the karmas accumulated. So in order to recognize that, we now train our mind in the completion stage. So to recognize that later, we now dissolve the visualization, the protection sphere, the whole mandala, one by one dissolve. And if we train in that now while we are alive, then later when we die, we will have an actual experience of dissolution, and we might recognize it at that time. So actually it is also said that that dying, the process of dying and the process of falling asleep are one and the same thing. There's only a difference in subtlety. One is more coarse and one is more subtle, but it's the same thing. A subtle form of dying is falling asleep. Every evening, actually, we die in a subtle way, but because our karma of this life is not yet over, we wake up again. But actually, they are the same. So now for the details of the visualization for the completion stage, you can refer to your text. We have said that there's just the hung syllable left, and then also the hung syllable dissolves. It dissolves from its lower part, like the little hook, the vowel of the hung, and that dissolves upwards until it dissolves into the little circle on top. And then on top of that circle, there's a very subtle little string, and that is called the nada string. And when all dissolves into this nada string, think that this nada string then becomes finer and finer until it becomes almost imperceptible. And in the end, it finally dissolves into space and becomes empty. And at that point, you should allow your mind to rest within a state of Mahamudra, free from any reference point. So that also corresponds to like how we fall asleep or later die. So when we fall asleep after we have had a dream, then we fall into an unconscious state. So it is very similar to when we die later. We come to when we die, we come to the actual basic nature of the mind, which we refer to as the basic luminosity. That is the utterly pure natural state of the mind. And if we have practiced we will recognize this state. And what we recognize is that view of Mahamudra. We naturally come to this state of Buddha nature when all the various concepts, afflicted concepts, have stopped. So a practitioner might recognize that natural state at that time, and upon recognition, one attains enlightenment in the Dharmakaya, in the first bardo. And that corresponds to recognizing the deep sleep state. And so that is attaining enlightenment in a single lifetime, a single body. And so then, in order to train in this, we practices like the dream yoga, or recognizing the luminosity of the deep sleep state, and so on. And so when we, it is said that in order to, there are certain practices that are conducive to recognize the luminosity of the deep sleep state, such as, for example, going to sleep at the same time and eating a little food and on schedule every day, sleeping lighter, sleeping lesser, and so on. So first of all, we must recognize the dream state. So that is first we fall asleep. There is a dream, then the dream disappears, the dream dissolves, and we have a perception of whiteness, of redness, and of blackness, and then we fall in an unconscious state. And at that time, if one recognizes, there is perception of a clear early morning sky. We fall into a deep sleep state. So this is something that only really yogis of highest capacity recognize. It is extremely difficult to recognize. And then even if one recognizes it, if one's lifespan is not yet over, again, one will wake up. So an ordinary person falls into this deep sleep state, and then just before they wake up, they will have another dream, and then they wake up. So at this point, we also must actually ask ourselves, is there any difference between our perceptions at daytime and the dreams we have at night? There actually is not the slightest difference between them. And normally we think that the dreams are unreal, they're empty, and life is the reality. But in truth, they are actually the same. So first, in the beginning, we have entered the wombs of our mothers. Then we have fallen unconscious. Then we have taken birth in this world as a precious human being. And until the day we die, this entire lifetime is just like the dream of one single night. So this is how it will appear to you after you have died. This life is a passing, a fading away, just like last night's dream, like one dream of one night. It seems like, oh, I have slept, that was my dream. And all of the appearances of this life can't be seen anywhere, they're all gone. And like a dream, you then continue on to the next life. So there really is not the slightest difference between the daytime perceptions and the dreams at night. So through the dream, we must recognize that appearances are our own mind, are made by our own mind. And so how we can establish that is that, for example, when you're sleeping, it is your body lies in your bed. So your friend just sees this body lying there, sleeping. But your mind, when you're dreaming, actually creates an entire universe and sentient beings that appear to the mind, just like this world in the daytime. And self and others engage in all sorts of activities in your dream world. And that is all created by your own mind. So in this way, you can understand how the entire universe, samsara and nirvana, is all created by one's own mind. Therefore, it is said appearances are one's own mind. Everything that appears is the projection of one's own habitual imprints, just like a TV show. So to a yogi of the highest capacity, there really is no difference between the daytime perceptions and the dreams we have at night. And so due to the positive or negative imprints in our mind, we project positive or negative dreams at night. So then to a yogi of an average capacity, for them, they might fall asleep but not recognize the deep sleep state. But then when they're in the dream state, they might remember the Yidam deity. And so if we're able to do that, then you will also be able to remember the Yidam in the Pardo and then attain enlightenment in the Sambhogakaya nature in the Pardo. So first when we die, we fall unconscious, and then we do not, or we fall asleep, we fall unconscious, and then we do not recognize the natural state, and we begin to dream. And then if you're able to remember the Yidam deity and the mantra, then you will attain enlightenment in the Sambhogakaya, in the Bardo later on, taking birth in the Pure Land of that deity.
The Dhamma Ratata, so Lata Hari Parkin, is also a Zenia, Malamor Tata Hari Tabala. It's a minute in your Sabbath Hindi or Sintina, Kerito, Sabbath Hindi, Sinti to make your Otiba. They go along left to the Pita, give a child, air Hindi already. You know, he Dhamma Ratata, Jordan Gomez, Sort of day, you know, Lamson, Nobody, Armatuba, Lion to the club, the time was the static chance, the run to one body. Talks like the jingle, not only the Armatuba. They, the Pardon, one something of the class constituted. 참아서 이제 동안에 저들 당대 나도 발 맞추고 그식도 남자들이 classic 거고 classic 바로 반 상태였고요. 제가 더 완전히 드리면서 몇좀 드리 소리를 가지고 일본애들이 몇개 세마사들이 살거든 남자다 아주 동안에 살면 드리게 영향하고 본 드리지는 이거가네요. 만나는 팀에서 이래서 다 동화를 긴 나를 나라서 봐. 앞으로 바마도 제일 장사다지 본나. 이 세마 내려와 가지고 좋아하는 때문에 영토고요. 시간당 이 세마사들 오늘 내용이 되게 나쁘겠잖아. 봤더니 말 최선으로 거의 상대적으로 더 당성 나머지 동대의 길이가 좋은 길이죠. 라디오를 신고서 대사에서 광고를 할 것들과 하는 게 가지고요. 그래서 다라이 조금 거라 타마 대한 길이죠. 하다가 초기하고 제가 됐다고 노사께로 라이브 실지 바래시. 예를들이 공부를 내가 뭐가 라이브 좀 있는 집에 대라 조금 대들이랑 이들 먹으면 편리하네. 광고를 하는 요구는 자산이요는데 무슨 내가 뭐가는데 잘 번지고나 내가 제일 많이 받은 안티안 목표요. 이 플랫폼이 쳐들지 않는 야고 이동 못해도 고요. 그러다 참아지다 좋아하는 게 좌측한 데만 있고 동대를 들이대라. 제라 뭐라는 게서 이 세마사도 게서 이 하다 같이 보내지 저기부터 들어가마데 이 세마는 정말 좀 좋게 나왔잖아 이 세마 오마도 이 레시아 마들레로 레로 좀 이렇게 됐다 요지 감기는 풍마도 피는체 보내죠 그래서 주요도 있잖아 풍마 얘기 됐다 있잖아 될 수는 이제 친구는 그
So this instruction from remembering the deity and the mantra upon awakening is something that you should habituate at all times in whatever you do during the day. So even if you do not recognize the dream state or the luminosity of the deep sleep state, habituate to the deity and the mantra in the waking state, and also habituate to cultivating love and compassion, sentient beings, help them when you can, when you see them experiencing suffering and so on. And in that way, you're forming a habitual imprint that will actually eventually also arise in the dream state. You'll have a virtuous dream. And even that already is very beneficial. First there's the generation stage, and then it dissolves in the completion stage into emptiness. And then you remain within an empty state for however long you can. And then before another thought arises, you should again arise as the deity. So after dissolution, you again arise as the deity without allowing any other thoughts to intervene first. So before an ordinary thought arises, come out of the state of emptiness, appearing in the form of the deity, and at this time, unlike your own body, with one face and two arms, in an instant, without thinking about anything else. And if you habituate to that, then you will attain enlightenment in the second pardon. So after the visualization has dissolved into emptiness, again the deity arises, and it should arise without being interrupted by any other thought. In an instant, again bring to mind the deity, and you will attain enlightenment in the second pardon. That is also why, for example, during the empowerment, you are instructed to close your eyes and focus on the seed syllable and so on. And then at some point you are supposed to open your eyes, and in an instant, the moment you open your eyes, you should look at the image of the deity, and then have that image, especially the face of the deity, deity appear in your mind, and then habituate to this again and again. So this is actually related to practicing remembering the deity upon awakening. So the moment you wake up from sleeping, even if you can't recognize the dream state, at the moment you wake up from sleeping, you should train your mind in remembering the deity and the deity's mantra. So that is the point we are introduced to during the empowerment. And actually, that's a quite easy practice because it is something that anyone can do. Even if we do not recognize the dream state or the luminosity of the deep sleep state, anyone can train their mind in remembering the Yidam deity and the mantra upon awakening. So whenever you wake up in the middle of the night or in the morning, whenever you wake up from sleeping, for example, think of Chenrezig and recite a few or Manipadme Hum mantra. If you're able to do that, then upon awakening, the moment you awake, then there is no doubt that you will attain enlightenment in the second pardon. So we dissolve the generation, and then again we arise as the deity. So without allowing any other thought to intervene. So actually, we should also here recognize the connection between the symbolism we are introduced to during the empowerment and how it really relates to our actual practice. So actually, for this reason, also the various images of the deities, like the statues or the tankas and so on, appear in this very beautiful way, very pleasing to the eye. Because as beginning practitioners, we still are very much drawn by our desire, and we are drawn to beautiful things. So when we see a very beautiful image of a deity, then we want to visualize that, we want to practice that. So for beginning practitioners, it is not so good to be confronted with a more repulsive image of a deity, because then we will have an aversion to it, and we will have no interest in practicing the deity. So that is actually only suitable for those with higher mental capacities. If we are beginning practitioners, actually it might be quite harmful to our mind, because in the beginning we are more likely to cultivate devotion to something that is pleasing to the eye, as opposed to something that is unpleasant. So that's actually why the various images like statues and tankas always are depicted in this very beautiful form. So in any case, now putting that into practice, the moment you awaken from your sleep, it is very important. The important point here is to remember the deity and the mantra. And that is why also it is helpful that you have just like a small wrist mala like this one close by. So every time you wake up from sleeping, you can take it and recite one small round of Mani mantra, for example. So every time you wake up, at least recite a few Mani mantras immediately. Actually, of the various religious items, the scriptures and also the malas are really most beneficial, because they really are like a supporting basis for us to accumulate merit.
외래들이 철들이 동화동화 냠들냠들 가면 좀 같이 보이고 철들이 냠에서 학들이 봐서 대대는 무서워하다가 무서워나 로 대사 줄고 치고 그래도 누가 가해는 철들이 줄바는 어디가 좋아 개량진 나서는 하도 좋아 치고 영어 좋아하는 일화 좋아 제가 그랬고 대양 학생한테 세번 들고 가령 많이 보고 이렇게 있었다. 며칠 기다리나 생각 많이 했는데 기다리면 좋아하는 이런 걸 가져오는 곳이 얼마고 이때 사들은 신들 시바 제와 이바지 용기를 하자들이 대화를 그바동한테 기초로 정말 나서는 문제들 자신을 받는 자로 말이 대용기 시험으로 했지.
And so then there are some various sadhanas or methods to practice, and there are certain individuals who really understand their meaning and who really have completed the practices of listening, reflection, and meditation, and they all understand the qualities of the deity, of omniscience, of love, and of power to protect. But these are advanced practitioners. Now, for beginning practitioners, it is a bit different. So, for beginning practitioners, it is necessary to actually go through the various stages of the sadhana, the ritualistic aspects, like we're making offerings and we're playing the instruments, the various like parts of the sadhana practice. Important to actually also carefully practice, so we can really connect to the meaning of those words in the sadhana. For example, there is the various activities of instruments and chanting in a certain rhythm, in a certain tune, and various activities. And that is just like, for example, preparing food, cooking rice, for example. So when you're cooking rice, first you're cooking it and you're frying it in some oil and you're mixing some like other vegetables and so on. You have a bowl of food that you can offer to someone, and that is like the perfectly rounded up sadhana practice with all its various elements. And so the reason for mentioning this is because sometimes people like to go straight to the practice and leave aside all the ritualistic aspects of the sadhana, like the instruments and the various offerings and so on. They don't deem them to be essential, but that is more like just giving someone a plain rice to eat and to say just eat it, but it will taste very plain and not very good. So then we will very quickly lose our interest in eating rice and not eat it anymore. And so for this reason, it is very good in the beginning that disciples actually come together to be able to practice all the various elements of the sadhana practice, like the instruments and the offerings and so forth. Because then, in this way, since we're practitioners that follow the practice lineage of blessings, then the power of the practice will become enhanced. So that is, for example, my own experience. Since I have practiced the Dharma for some years now, I really find that if I practice a sadhana ritual perfectly with all the various like ritualistic aspects and the chanting, the tune and the rhythm and so on, a very unique feeling arises in my mind. And I believe that if that arises in my mind, it might also arise in the mind of others. Because what I'm feeling, this special feeling, is really the blessing of the deity. So therefore it is important to practice these sadhanas with great care. We should not just be very careless and just practice it like in a kind of abbreviated, rushed way. So in that way, if we just, for example, if we practice it in a careless way, it is just like we're trying to tell somebody something, but we don't actually understand the meaning of the words we are saying. So if you're just like babbling something emptily, then it might be nice words, but actually there's no feeling behind it. And so for this reason, it becomes meaningless to the person who hears what you are saying. And so for this reason, in order to develop like faith in the deity, in order to really understand the deity's qualities of omniscience, of love, and of power to protect, it is really important to practice the various aspects of the sadhana. And for this reason, it is very important for the disciples to come together and practice together, so they can really absorb the power and the blessings of the deity practice.
Yeah, 명호가 강화도 명호 소소라는 일이 똑같은 것이 뭐라 그래도 제도 라는 용어 문제 일이 중요한데 라는 용어가 문제 됐겠지만 가인 양성은 생기 받치고 도야를 예를 들어 받아는 소치고 보고 대비들이 다 사람을 밤에 와요 샤크들이 뭐상 자원이 넘치 다들 대화사에 소망하는 수업을 일을 비마사를 하는 것이 요이지 저쪽으로만 쏘아도 얘는 이제 어떤 거 쏘았다 봤다 되더니 보면 제일로에 회사를 소속을 접근하는 게 과연 개털을 말이야. 얘는 대박 도치고요. 대박이 지치고요. 그래도 그때는 소통 기다려 무섭게 좀 많이 봐. 시초로 이거 치고 예 잘로 무섭 그래서 소라기 치고요. 이거 제대로 잘 지켜 봐서 왔다는 내가 제대로 요리 뜨는 주더라. 지금 알아. 가봐다는 그 말이 지금 막 왔다. 서로 이제 비거나 나를 담아 클라스 되는 이게 좋은 앞에 좋은 앞에 안 앞에 이거 도저 빨리 차이는 게 나기를 되게 소리를 배를 산재를 배를 소리를 나기 되게 가돌아서 이렇게요. 빨리 배를 많이 줘서 못 가면 라게 담을 봐도 따라서 좀 봐서 예산이 요래 봐서 배도 동시고 배도 동하시 그래 대바도 인가에 요리 제기제가 당하고 손에 yapım도 갈치고 잡아라 저 잡아라 좀 아무 맛도 좀 되거든 잡아라 무슨 배우면 돼야 말이지 저 무슨 좀 저들한 거 사. 그래서 왔다 버리면 제가 사모하면 되니 그봐 탑을 해버리면서 내가 이제 바로 인가요
So then, for example, in the sadhana, we make offerings to the deity, one of the ritualistic aspects of the sadhana. So when we make these offerings, for example, also we must understand their significance. So it is not that we must make these offerings and only if we make these offerings the deity will actually come. That's not the case. Actually, the reason why we make these offerings in the sadhana is in order for us, the practitioner, to accumulate merit. What is important is that when we engage in practice, the way to accomplish the practice is to focus our body, speech, and mind single-pointedly while we engage in practice. And by making these offerings and practicing the rituals of the sadhana, these are skillful means for concentrating the body, speech, and mind single-pointedly. So it is not that there's a certain need to make an offering to the deity, but temporarily it is for our sake to accumulate merit and ultimately to attain wisdom. So for this purpose, we must focus our body, speech, and mind single-pointedly. And so there's one story about to represent that. In the past, Sangha was practicing the Buddha Maitreya. First, he was practicing him for 3 years, but he didn't see anything. And then he grew tired from practice and he left. But then he practiced again for another 3 years. And again, he didn't see anything. He got tired of it. And then he practiced another 3 years. And then he really got tired of it and he left. And he was traveling on the road. And on the road, he saw a sick dog. And the dog was infested by maggots on the verge of dying. And in that moment, he cultivated a great compassion, like unbearable, boundless compassion. He started to cry and he closed his eyes and tried to lick off the maggots from the body of the dog. And when he opened his eyes, instead of seeing the dog, he saw the Buddha Maitreya directly for the very first time. And so then the Buddha Maitreya gave him the teachings, like the 5 sections of teachings of the Buddha Maitreya and so on. But then, as Sangha said to Maitreya, you must really have no compassion at all. I've practiced you for 9 years, and I didn't see you at all. You didn't come to me. And Maitreya replied, it is not that I have no compassion, only because you cannot see me. You could not see me because you are too obscure. But in fact, from the very moment you had the intention to practice, up until now, I have been together with you all that time. But Asanga said, I don't believe it. And so then he said, well, then put me on your back and bring me to let's go to town. And so then, so he did. And when he went to town, of course, no one was able to see Maitreya on his back, except for there were a few beings with some lighter karma, and all they could see is actually a person carrying a dog, like a dog's corpse on their back, and they thought maybe he is crazy or something. So actually, it was really his own perception. And unless we have purified our own afflictive emotions, our impure perception, we cannot see things in a different way. So actually what we are seeing is our own projection. So for example, when we see the faults in someone, for example, a guru, what we are really seeing is our own faults, the faults of our own afflictions. What we are really seeing is the manifestation of our own karmas and habitual imprints. So therefore, no matter what, it is important to sustain a pure perception and devotion. And that is especially important when we practice Yidam deity. So, for example, there are many religions in this world, and we should regard all of the religious practitioners as the actual Sangha. So then you might say, but all the trouble in the world is caused by religions. So what's with that? So actually, it's not the fault of the religion, but it's the fault of the person that mixes the religion with the politics. So the religion always has good qualities itself, but the fault lies in the person. And so therefore, we should consider any real religious practitioner as a Sangha. And if you see it in this way, because you cultivate devotion, your mind becomes very open and vast. So that is the higher field, the field of devotion. And then the lower field are all the sentient beings. Whoever you encounter, you see them as your parents, without any bias, seeing some as your friends and some as your enemies. You see them all the same. Even when you see a little animal, recognize them as your parent. So whoever you see, whatever being you see, if it is a sentient being that is bound by suffering, it is a field of compassion. So if there's only those two fields, either the field of devotion or the field of compassion, your mind will always remain very clear, very pure. So you sustain a pure perception in this way. So this is how we should see clearly all spiritual teachers, but all sentient beings. So often it is the case that even when we encounter a real spiritual master, we see faults in them. But when we see the faults in anyone else, it is really due to the affliction within our own mind. So we blame others for their affliction. We say they have so many faults, they are so afflicted. But what we are really saying actually is our own affliction. So then where is this affliction? Actually, it's also within me. And in fact, often even worse than in others, it is present within myself. So a real practitioner would be able to recognize their own afflictions rather than focusing on the faults of others. So if you're able to practice in this way, then your practice will become really very powerful. So now for the deity, it makes no difference whether or not we make offerings. The deity has no preferences. The power of the deity is ever present. But for our sake, it is very important to cultivate a pure perception and devotion, just like in Maitreya's story. So when whoever thinks of the deity, whoever supplicates the deity will be right at their side. There is no bias in the deity's mind. For example, it is said if we supplicate to Tara, she will be next to you like swiftly, like a lightning bolt in an instant. She knows of your supplication. For example, I myself have not had the fortune to engage in extensive retreat practice in this life, but what I do have is great faith and devotion, trust in Tara. For example, Tara really has protected my life at least 8 times already. There were 8 instances in this life where I really was on the verge of death. I almost died, and she really protected, saved my life. And therefore, I have firm trust in Tara. And also, for this reason, I tell others you should supplicate to Tara or any other Yidam deity. Then it is really very powerful. So I tell my disciples also there's no benefit if you just call me. You should rather call Tara, supplicate to Tara. Or also if you wish to benefit others, for example, if I wish to benefit someone, if I want to help someone, all I really do is not thinking about the person, but I'm really just supplicating to Tara. And that is sufficient to benefit those who are alive, those who have passed away, and also oneself. For example, between friends. So normally when you are in a relationship, for instance, there's 2 partners, there is a loving relation. And that has a good and a bad side. On the good side, of course, love is always beneficial. But on the downside, that love is usually tainted by self-grasping and possessiveness. And due to this, we become jealous. And then in this way, this relation becomes very harmful and of really no benefit. So now the root of practice it really is to supplicate to the deity. That will benefit all those who have passed away and who are alive, also in our day-to-day relations. So when we engage in the practice of the 3 roots, this is how we need to understand the power of the deity. And so it is not enough to just understand that, but also it is necessary that we know how to actually put that into practice, how to apply it. And we put it into practice correctly if we cultivate a pure perception and a devotion. Otherwise, we might use the deity in a wrong way. For example, we practice the deity with a worldly intention. For example, you have a business and you want your business to be successful. So then you practice Zambala. But that's the wrong intention, because if you do not have the merit of generosity from previous lives, Zambala practice will not help you at all to become successful in your business if you have not created the causes. With that knowledge, a knowledge that is based on karma, you should supplicate to the deity and practice the deity. So this is the skillful means to practice the deity with an understanding of karma, as well as a pure perception and devotion.
너 제대로 차. 이게 레사도 레이트 나타나는 사람이 단단하게 아주 세계 탐지를 필요하다. 대화 다들 주로 있는 세계 필요하다. 대화가 필요하죠. 같이 같이 계속 요구하고 누가 어떻게 대화를 그들로 왔다 대답했더니 왔다 토탈 대답이 이거를 줘. 그리고 왔다 시계도 나서 왔다 같이 너무 복잡들이 있고 초월을 하는 힘이 치료에 특강 초월을 하나 좋아 초월 특강 초월을 초월 나도 되는 걸 알고 그래서 이거에 그래서 미치는 라스와 초월이 초사를
And so then for the Yidam deity, there's many different forms of Yidam deities. For example, there's peaceful deities, wrathful deities, and that also is often misunderstood. For example, some people think that the peaceful deities are good, but the wrathful deities are not so good because they look very angry. And then they don't like wrathful deities, and they even cultivate a wrong view towards them. But that's really a very wrong way of seeing that. Because actually when it comes to compassion, for example, between the peaceful and the wrathful deities, the wrathful deities' compassion is even greater than the peaceful deities' compassion. It is, for example, just like a mother who disciplines her naughty child. So the child is very naughty, so the mother wants to protect the child, and out of great compassion becomes infuriated in order to protect the child, out of great love for the child. Or for example, in this world there is certain beings, certain people who kill a lot of people who want to kill everyone. In the end, the result, of course, will fall back upon themselves. So these are beings that are extremely difficult to tame because their afflictions are too strong. And these beings are tamed through the activities of the wrathful deities. And often in the context of wrathful deity practice, we make offerings of flesh, blood, and bones, for example. And that is related to the three poisons, the afflictive emotions of sentient beings. Flesh is related to ignorance, blood to desire, and bones to hatred or anger. And we represent them in the form of flesh, blood, and bones because the three afflictions are intangible. We cannot see them because they actually are empty of self-nature. But still, they remain within our mind stream. So to represent them, we make these offerings. For example, we say that bones are connected to aggression or hatred. And so that is, the bones are a form that we receive from the drops received from our fathers. Then the blood is received from the red drop of our mothers. And then through their union, the consciousness enters through an imprint of ignorance, self-grasping, and that is related to the flesh. So then one enters the womb and the body forms. It is the false grasping at the existence of an I when there actually is no I. And so flesh, blood, and bones represent the three poisons in the mind of sentient beings. And these are made in offerings in order to purify them. For example, there are some people in this world who do many things to benefit sentient beings in a worldly sense or in a spiritual sense. But then there is others who cause a lot of harm, who undermine the virtuous efforts of others and even consider that to be virtuous practice, so they have wrong views. So their karmas and imprints, their perceptions are too powerful, and the only way to tame them is through wrathful activities, for example, like Vajrakilaya or Yamantaka. So they actually are an embodiment of infuriated great compassion, even greater than peaceful. Actually, also in terms of ultimate and relative, it is said that the wrathful deities are closer to the ultimate truth, a direct pointing to the ultimate truth. So they are deities of the ultimate level. whereas the peaceful deities are deities on the relative level. And also in terms of blessings, it is said that the blessings of the wrathful deities are even more profound.
그 동의자가 용어란 말이 동의 용어는 이제 동의서 세트고 너는 체리 받게 하자 같이 보래 체리 받게 하고는 사마 체리 받 인지 체리 받 세티 탐지 서로 동의를 인지 체리 인지 체리 가 체리 받고 세티 탐지 풀받아 네가 는 자카트리 yap고차고 인지하고 가다 되어 소치 쳐버려 가 체리 받 나는 체리 받는 사마 인지 가서 보는 이런 것이 기대가 돼요 이거는 사람들이 처음 말 기지는 괜찮아. 나 얘기 다는 그 실제로 차가고 여기 라는 동안 다니지 또 잘하는 거지. 제가 저들이 가인 양점하나에 막은 하서니 맞췄는지 라디오지 프로젝트 잡을 때도 여기 다음에 거는 이제 조금도 자기도 이게 상고 말이 너는 라디오 소리만 듣고 하고 보통 이게 록되니 이게 Tipo che ti prendi tutti gli sono
And so then there is some people who think that there's all these practices, the sadhanas and the yidam deity, and all these scriptures and the empowerments and the transmissions and the instructions, it's all so complicated, so difficult. And or others say that I just don't have the conditions to practice, or I'm too old, or some of my senses are not so clear and so on. So they think that they can't practice for whatever reason. But actually, there is no need to lose heart, because there is always a way to practice. And that is through the 37 bodhisattva practices. It's most important to have a mind of bodhicitta. If you lack bodhicitta, no matter what other practice you do, it will not lead to enlightenment. So it is most important to develop bodhicitta, which is essentially love and compassion. For example, think about all the happiness you might experience in this life. It all comes from the virtue that you have practiced in the past. And so how have you received this precious human body? It was given to you by your parents. And so first you develop love for your parents. Think that they have given me this precious human body. Think of them with love. There are some people who do not have such loving relations with their parents. Often they are even angry at their parents. But that is also a mistaken state of mind. Because actually when you love others, it's actually to your own greatest benefit. Your own self-grasping diminishes. You will understand that if you understand the qualities of love. If you care for others, it is really your own greatest benefit. If you are generous to others, you actually receive the merit. So it is your own greatest benefit. So this is how you would think if you really understand the qualities of the Dharma. Otherwise, you might just take some pride and think, oh, I've been so kind to this person, or I've been so generous, or I've helped this person, and so on. But that's a sign that you do not really understand the qualities of merit, the 6 paramitas. They actually are to your own greatest benefit. For example, if you're generous, it is to your own greatest advantage. Or if you're patient with others, it is your own greatest benefit. For example, there are many generous people. There are some who are able to help the entire world or help an entire country. And then there's others who are not even able to provide for their own sustenance, their own food. And that is due to karma. It is said if you wish to know what you did in the past, look at your present body. And if you wish to know where you will go next, look at your present actions. And so for your knowing what you did in the past, look at your present body. There is no happiness to be found which does not arise from love. Whatever happiness or well-being you experience necessarily originates from love. If you really think about it, for example, you have obtained this precious human body through practicing ethical discipline. That actually ultimately comes from love. or you practice you experience a long lifespan, or you are beautiful, or you have good relationships and so on. And that is the result of having practiced patience. Or you are wealthy, you're rich. That is the result of having practiced generosity. So all the states of well-being in the higher realms comes from the practices of generosity, patience, ethical discipline. And all of these practices originate in a mind of love. For example, a mother loves her child. So all her actions are based on this love. Because she loves the child, she is generous. She freely gives without holding back. Because she loves the child, she doesn't want to harm the child. She's patient with the child. She doesn't get angry. And that is ethical discipline and patience. So all of these qualities arise from love, ultimately. So that is the quality of love to recognize. So think of your principal parents first, with love, and then think that there's not a single being who has not been my parent in the past. Or think about someone else that you love, like your partner and so on, and then think that all beings have been my partner. Or if you love your child, think that all beings have been my children. Because in past lives, you have taken on limitless bodies since beginningless time in samsara, and you have left them all behind like an old pair of clothing, millions and millions of times. And this is also extensively explained in the scriptures, the words of the Buddha. What is important for us is to recognize in all these times that we have had parents. So remembering these words in the scriptures is a method for us to cultivate a mind of love. And then the method to not allow love to decline where it has arisen is to cultivate patience. And that is the distinctive quality of a Sangha. A Sangha possesses love and patience. Ordinary beings do possess love, but often they lose the love because they have no patience. So practice love and patience. For example, even if you don't know anything else aside from the Mani mantra, there's beings who have become liberated only through the Mani mantra, if that was founded on great love and compassion. Naturally, as a result, the Pure Lands will manifest. And then all those who are endowed with love will meet in the Pure Lands. So this is what we call a Pure Land. So temporarily, we take birth as gods or humans in the higher realms. And then likewise, all those who are selfish and who are angry, hateful and jealous, and they also will meet again together and live in a similar place, like in hell or as a hungry spirit. Or we can see all these forms of suffering even in this world. Within this world, we can see various forms of suffering and also forms of well-being. All well-being comes from a mind of love. So when you see that, you should feel, I must sustain love. And when you witness suffering, recognize that it arises from afflictive emotions. And where is the affliction? Actually, also within my own mind. For example, think in this way when you see an animal or anyone else suffering in this world. Recognize that this is their reflection, a projection of afflictive emotions, of hatred, of jealousy, and so on. And ignorance is not to understand the fault in jealousy and hatred and so on. As a result of ignorance, then we're born as an animal. So even if you don't know anything at all, if you just know the Mani mantra and you develop the four immeasurables, it is sufficient. So that is, you cultivate love, seeing all sentient beings limitless as space as your own parents. For example, when you enter this room, everyone here would appear to you like your actual family, and you will be happy, therefore, wherever you go. You will be able to accept whatever difficulty you encounter. And actually, you will not perceive much as difficulty. There will not be much suffering. And even if it arises, you will be able to let it go through the force of the four immeasurables. So you cultivate immeasurable love, and then you cultivate immeasurable compassion for the suffering of sentient beings, and then you cultivate immeasurable immeasurable joy, and that is to rejoice in all the benefit and happiness, all the well-being in this world. For example, if a country is doing well, you rejoice, and as a result, you will receive the same quality that you rejoiced in. And then fourth, you develop immeasurable equanimity, and that is, if you already have cultivated love, compassion, and joy, the mind will naturally abide in a peaceful state at all times. And even if you have some difficulties, some experience hardships, you will not experience your circumstance as a hardship, because you are completely focused on the suffering and the well-being of others. So your mind becomes very light. You will not really perceive your own suffering much, and if difficulties arise, you will be able to tolerate them. So this is really the essence of practice. Whatever you practice, and even if you cannot practice a lot, that in itself will lead to birth in the higher realms and ultimately enlightenment. So the point of saying this is that you should never lose heart and think that, oh, I just can't practice because I do not possess certain conditions for practice, like I don't have a text or I don't have this or that. Actually, if you only read the 37 practices, it is sufficient. If you can't read them, listen to them or memorize them. And the benefits of only that are actually inconceivable. So I ask you therefore to please keep this in mind. So the emotions, the afflictions of hatred and jealousy and so on are false, and we should recognize them as false. But then also it is important to see, to distinguish between actions that are done for the sake of others and those that are done for one's own sake. And if they are done for the sake of others, then actually, even if they seem to be aggressive, they actually become beneficial. For example, the other day, I was going around, and I came across a wall, like an exhibition with the pictures, images of those soldiers who have died fighting for their country here. And people put up flowers next to them. That is really wonderful to see. And people come here to make their prayers, their dedications for them. And so actually these people, these soldiers, for example, have actually given up their own life force for the benefit of others in order to protect their country. So there's a great difference between whether one's actions are driven by a personal concern or like a common concern. And so if they have lost their life in order to protect others without any selfish concerns, then actually ultimately what they have done will become beneficial, and they will take a positive birth again. And then, of course, if we engage in these actions for some personal benefit and kill others with aggression, then that will lead to a negative result. But also these beings require our dedication prayers. So this is what I did when I came there. I offered my dedication prayers for these beings, for all these beings. For example, there's this story of a previous life of the Buddha when he took a birth as a bodhisattva. And at that time, there was one evil person who meant to kill 500 merchants. And the Buddha knew that, or the bodhisattva, and therefore he killed that one person to save the other 500. So in a similar way, if we, for example, kill others in order to protect our country for the purpose of others, then actually the fault of that is much smaller.
Турнова в этом гораздо меньше, чем если мы убиваем ради самих себя.
Сторінка 16 з вільних молитв. Українська сторінка. Повер Гадару, Філоко, Нароко, Марко, Мілареко, Владарю Фармакам Коко, Факмадруко, Владимир Життенцом Боне. Ви інші майстри капків, вас молю, благословіть. Цієї хай пробуджуть цілковито, і перемігши ворогів своїх хибої вій, із сансари океану звільнив всіх, кого несуть хвилі народження, старіння, хвороб і смертей. Молюсь за те, щоб всі учителі були здорові. Молюсь за те, щоб вони довго жили, і щоб щедро плодоносили просвітлі їхні дії. Молюсь за те, щоб бути з Маніпуру воєдино. За прикладом Манджуші й Саманкабатри, які звитяжно запізнали сокровенну суть, я вслід за ними йду і так само, як вони, Бог присвячує всі заслуги на благо всіх істот. Благословінням Будди, що досяг трикарі, благословінням карми істини незмінної, благословінням самки нероздільної. Хай молитви наші сповняться воістину згідно чистих намірів присвяти. Силу істини приратни, благословінням всіх Будд і Бодхисаттв, подруга благою надбання двох заслуг, від кармадату чистої і неповторної. Хай воістину здійсняться ці молитви. Через добро, що я та всі в сансарі і нірвані творили, творимо і будемо творити. І через глибинну сутність усіх благ, хай я та всі істоти просвітлимось найшвидше, чудово і цілком без вороття. О величне Трипурхо, всемудре майстре карми, закон взаємної залежності ти опанував. Тому хай вивченням, осмисленням і медитацією та їх застосуванням у житті вчення Ратнашрі триватиме і процвітатиме, доки існує світ. З чистим наміром, що згідно вчення Будди, зарядом блага від навчання шляху, що без хиб, хай усі вчення Трипундратми, охоронця шляху Бодхисаттви процвітають і довго триватимуть. В центрі дивовижне буде світла, що без меж. Праворуч від нього владар безмірної любові, ліворуч владар небудів потужних. Довкола них буде його цісарки незліченні. Блаженна земля дивачину – це безмежні мир і щастя. Коли я та інші полишимо цей світ, нехай у дивачині ми народимося, покувшися назавжди самсарної покорності. І там нехай узрієм буду амітаву, молитвою цією і силою благословінь і в путі до часа всіх 10 сторін, хай це наше ревне прагнення поістину здійсниться без жодних перешкод. Подхічіто, чудовий намір просвітління, кому ти не проявилася, з'явився, а зародившись, не зникай. Зростай, благотворись все більше і сильніше.
Дякую.
друзі, зараз даємо Rinpoche безперешкодно вийти, да, не створюємо натовп, як вчора. Будь ласка, зараз можете збирати всі речі, як вчора, ми нічого не залишаємо. І ще вважайте, що завтра нова пошта буде закрита, тобто з цього боку не можна буде зайти, заходьте з іншого боку. Дякую.
Пора обращаться. Гоняйте. Администрация сказала, что если они